I find that one of the things that people miss, and perhaps this goes back to something that you were saying, Tony, is that because as testers we're educated to be very, very focused on what we expect, we very quickly allow our expectations to dominate our explorations. And that means you get battered back into, well, did I expect this or not? And I'm expecting it to do all these things. I'm going to verify it does all these things. And I've got a big list of all the things. And then suddenly you're back to, here's my list of expectations. I'm just going to check all of them. Whereas if you spend time practicing testing without expectations, and if you like, you play and you add a purpose to it and you're exploring, well, you add judgment to that exploration and you start testing. But I think you come back from your judgment a bit and then you start to explore more freely, and you do what you're saying, Steve. You explore the properties. I would think of those as behaviours. You come to an understanding of these are the potential behaviours of this bit of software, of this system indeed, because we're not software testers, we're systems testers. And that I think is interesting, is to take the judgment out in some more senses and to try to focus in on just what it is that you've got in front of you, away from your expectations, and allow your expectations to fizzle away for a while. And that then leads you to, I find, if it's going well, an understanding of what is inside what I'm testing, what's outside. Because you were talking about a text box, and it's got all these layers underneath it, and it's also got layers on this side of the screen as well, because it's got me interacting with the text box, and I might not be interacting with it with a keyboard or a language or all the facilities that you might expect. Accessibility person, you probably do have a different set of expectations. So I find that an interesting position to look at, what people aren't doing in exploratory testing, because sometimes I think you've not clarified for yourself what you're testing. You've not said this is inside and this is outside. This is something that I'm going to look at. This is something that I'm not going to. And that's where you get to the elephant tests, where you go, I've made it crash. Of course you've made it crash, because you've hit your computer with a hammer. You've done something that is not the system that you're testing. You've broken the browser and you're looking at the JavaScript. You've changed the clock on the system. Of course, none of the other clocks work now. There'll be no surprises there. So I that understanding of what layer you're poking at is very useful.
I think people are not aware of the models that surround the testing they're doing, because you've got the technical models, you've got the domain level models of what it's supposed to do, the semantics that are in there, the risks that are around there, the properties of it, the features, the functionality, the inherent stuff within the features that people don't even explain to you. There's so many different models in there, and I think sometimes that prevents people from targeting one because they don't even know where to start. So sometimes people don't track the decisions because they don't even know how to make a decision. So maybe teaching people how to make decisions and choose something deliberately will help. But I think people sometimes might be nervous that they're scared about making the decision because if they go down the wrong track and don't find anything,
then they've made that gamble.
Then it was a wrong decision, and they don't like being wrong, and certainly don't like admitting it.
I think that even if you find nothing, that's still finding out something.
And so it can be, if you're observing the right place, if you're building the model up, if you're actually learning it. What we have to be aware of is that difference between data and information. Right? If we're just keep going down the same thing, we don't learn it, and it's data. It's stuff that just fitted automatically into our model, confirmed what we knew. What we're trying to do, that might be useful. We might be trying to validate that something still works as it did before and confirms to the existing model. But when we're exploring, we have to be on the lookout for information, the stuff we didn't know, the stuff that's surprising, the stuff that can't fit into our model, the stuff that changes how we think about it, and that will give you richer areas to explore.
But sometimes you take a lot of data and you make information out of it by saying, yes, it fits this model, but that moment is often very good as a tester. It's something that rewards you. When you suddenly see the pattern that explains everything you've seen to this moment, you go, it's not doing that, it's doing this. It's for goodness sake, the password is not case sensitive. Oh, that's interesting. What can it possibly be doing? That kind of thing is that the patterns when they show up when you haven't had a model in mind and your brain offers you a model, and I love that.
That's where
don't look
I
for it.
find our more structured approach helpful. That it seems to make it, at least for me, makes it easier for my brain to pick up patterns like that. And a lot of the best bugs are not things that you just logically worked out. It was a whole bunch of things that you did, and then perhaps overnight your brain spent hours processing it while you were asleep or something, and you wake up the next morning and you go, my God, yeah, there's this pattern. And that has helped me find the bugs that clients and other testers couldn't find with weeks or months of testing. Is just sort of taking a structured approach with appropriate data, perhaps changing one variable at a time. And at the time, you don't find anything interesting, but the brain just processes it all, and then later on, the light comes on. And sort of related, I think one of the things that people get wrong with exploratory testing is reading things like specification, functional specs and other oracles first, because that can kind of blinker you. And actually I almost invariably spend the first half a day or a day testing anything without any preconceptions. I'll, even if I've got the functional spec, I'll ignore it. And I'll use the system, and I've typically, through that familiarization process, and I'm not even testing, I'm just familiarizing, finding what's there, find loads of bugs. And sometimes I can't find them later because my preconceptions actually prevent me from finding them. So what we've learned from that is it's really important to do that, test without the preconceptions, and also monitor everything, take screenshots, recordings and everything, because often those bugs won't happen again.
They won't.
Sometimes because they're first shot only bugs, and other times because by the time you've learnt the system,
you're never going to go down path crazy again.
And your brain stops you doing ththings that you might otherwise have done. So record absolutely everything, because it may not happen again.
Yeah, it's a bit like in a recording studio. Make sure you've got the mic open for the first take.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a funny one, that one. When you once you've read the instructions, you think, I've got to get to thing X so I can test thing X. So you take the shortcut there that you know works. And the first, second, third time through, actually, you don't know how it works. So you do things you don't expect. I was interesting. You talk about data and appropriate data. I see people sometimes think, "Oh, I'm looking. What are you doing? I'm looking for mathematical bugs. I'm looking for rounding bugs," and they're using tens. And there are ways to obscure what you're looking for by your choice of data. And to an extent, reading the instructions is one of those things. Once you read the instructions, you have obscured a whole bunch of ignorant moments. So I'll spend time, I think, well, I don't have the instructions, I do have the system. Maybe I want to think about what data it can go in and out. What interfaces have I got, or what data is there, or what's the history of the project, or what does the source code look like, what does the architecture look like, what's the technology look like. All those different things are ways of exploring a system without going to the manual first. It always disappoints me when I have a team of explorers and the first thing all of them do in the same team is they all do the same functional decomposition. You go, ah! You've looked at it, you say, all of you now know it can do the same things. There's other ways to cut to cut a system to find out.
What we have to learn how to do is continually swap out belief models.
Yeah.
And we're not trained how to do that. As humans, we're brought up to have a single belief model. And we're told this is the belief model and now we must work with it. Whereas as testers, we have to learn to bring in alternative belief models, change the ones that we have, mutate them into just utter madness, construct your own religion, believe 3 impossible things before breakfast. That's what we have to do. And if we're not building that skill, the skill to control our head and what models are in there, what we believe, then we're gonna fall into those traps. We have to have that ability. So, and there are ways of training yourself to have that ability. So we should do that.
Yes, we should.
So I mean, you do the improvisation stuff to help you do that.
Oh, absolutely.
When we do play music, we learn how to improvise to do these kind of things. read stuff that's sci-fi, whatever else, horror, stuff that's imaginative, that gives you something else, implant that in, learn how to do subtle mutations, write fiction to do these things, and it will help. All of it helps change, but having the notion that there's rude requirements, then that's reality, then we can't switch that out of our heads, is a big...
It's very difficult to unknow things like once you've read the spec and you've seen the expected user journeys. To actually remove that is almost impossible.
Well, you can if you're testing with somebody and you know and they don't, you can feel your hand going to the mouse or going to the keyboard to move them through something, and that's that moment where you think, yeah, they're going to find something new there. And to me, that's one of the ways to get that multiple belief system going. You've got more than one brain involved, but yeah, that intention that you have to help them is often the indication to me that they're doing something that you want to watch quite carefully. Different, obviously, when you're with a family member who can't type. So,
but it will make the system fail.
they will
It's
make the system
strange we
fail.
fail.
Yes, that's the exciting thing about watching your toddlers play videos on YouTube.